Welcome to I Said What I Said, a sports podcast giving you opinions not heard anywhere else. I'm your host, Brad Wakai, alongside my co-host, Tyson Gentry. Tyson, it's a special time of year. It's a special day because we are officially getting our football previews underway. How do you feel about that first and foremost?
Well, I don't know if the camera's going to pick it up, but I'm getting gray hairs. I'm so stressed out about these 45 team conferences, and I'm trying to figure out who transferred to what school, what did I forget about, who's coaching where. So bear with us a little bit because I'm going to mess up and claim that somebody who transferred out is still at, I can't say Clemson, but every other school in the ACC essentially. So, yeah, this one's going to be fun, dude. This is uncharted territory a little bit. If you were here a year ago, or 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we do these every year. We're going to kind of go through the conference, break it down, give win predictions and things like that at the end. So make sure you stick around for Money Makin Time. But yeah, this is new for us too. Like we've never had to dive into one of these. Can we call them mega conferences? Does that count? Does the ACC count as a mega conference?
I mean, there's a million teams.
There's a million.
You kind of got to. I mean, it's insane. I mean, I think we're bordering here. I think maybe when we get to 2, it'll be the mega conferences like NFC, AFC. But
yes,
I mean, we're getting close. That's for sure. So, like Tyson laid out, we're going to do the breakdowns of the teams, go through that, and Money Makin Time. We're going to pick our win totals. So make sure to stay tuned. And before we dive in, if you're watching on YouTube, smash the like button. If you're listening in podcast form, if you like what you hear, give us a review if you can. It really does help us out. So before we get into the teams, let's just talk about the conference as a whole, because we had some interesting offline conversations just regarding the ACC, kind of where the programs are, the mentality of the different coaches, and how these schools utilize their NIL funds. So I'll tee it up for you, Tyson. I know you had an interesting thought about that, so I want you to explain it to the audience what you were thinking.
Well, on my drive home today, as we were kind of thinking of, putting the finishing touches kind of on what we think about the ACC conference as a whole, it kind of dawned on me, Brad, that as we're in this transfer portal era of college football, the ACC is really the perfect thing to look at. Not the ACC as a whole, but I'm talking about essentially the 3 premier programs within the ACC. I think that you have 2 different extremes on how to not do or not handle the transfer portal. And then you have who, in my opinion, is doing it the best or the most, the way that sets you up for prolonged success. So I'll kind of go through that. I think, on one side of the spectrum here, we have Clemson, right? There's, 4 schools this year that didn't take in a transfer. It's Clemson and the service academies, right? And that's the Dabo Swinney way. They're going to recruit out of high school. You're going to be here and you're going to be a Clemson Tiger, and that is what it is. We're not bringing anybody else in. It's not going to win you a lot of games. Like, it'll win you 9 games, but it's not going to win you 12, which is where they want to be. And then on the other side of this spectrum, you have the Miami Hurricanes, who, if you take a look through their offensive and defensive roster, like the whole D-line is brand new, right? We got a brand new quarterback, brand new running back. That is a little bit unsustainable as well. You're basically fielding an AAU team every year, and you're trotting them out there in July and saying, hey, learn how to play with each other. Game start in a month. And then the middle ground is Mike Norvell and Florida State. And I think that they do it the best, maybe in the country, certainly in the conference, because Mike Norvell, they prioritize Florida high schools because you have to, right? The high schools are in Florida. The talent's in your backyard. You want to get these guys in your system immediately. But then they go in and they supplement with from the past, right? Let's look at a guy like Jared Verse. Let's look at a guy like Keon Coleman, right? You can kind of run through some of these big superstar type players. They're not looking for, oh man, we need 4 brand new offensive linemen. We need a home run hitter. Like, this is where we struggled last year. This is where we fell short this year in recruiting. Let's go target those positions and this kind of athlete through the transfer portal. And it also kind of humanizes the players a little bit in a way that I feel like on the Dabo side of things, like you are a cog in a machine, and then the Miami, or we'll call it the Deion Sanders way, right? Like, he's referring, this is my luggage is Louis. It's like, man, these are kids. These are 18-year-old kids. And I think that the way Mike Norvell does it is very straightforward. I don't think there's any surprises in the Florida State locker room when a Keon Coleman walks through the door. Like, everybody knows it's coming, but they also know, hey, man, I signed up for this as a 5-star recruit out of high school. I'm going to have to, work to play or my spot gets took.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I feel like maybe the Big Ten would have an argument for it. But I was going to say this conference may have the biggest gap in between who the haves and the have-nots when it comes to NIL and how it's used, right? Like Duke, it's a private institution. Are they really wanting to go out and spend massive amounts of money on athletic programs when they're a great medical school and engineering, all that stuff? And when you have Miami with one super rich booster and it wants to build up the program, they just go out and spend money like it's nothing, right? And so it's very interesting to see how it goes in the ACC in this new era, because Clemson was dominating back when, let's just say, the old school college football era, when it was just through recruiting and transfer portal, you had to sit out. And now with the Wild West, where, okay, let's just spend a ton of money on somebody and anybody can transfer and you can do it unlimited times. It's been, there's been some parity here. Clemson hasn't been as dominant. And so I'll be interesting to see if that trend continues this year. And that's what we'll talk about as we get into it. But I agree with you, Tyson. It's an interesting conference to look at as a broad perspective. But let's get into it now. Let's start talking about these different teams. And we're going to go through this conference in alphabetical order. So if you're listening out there and you want to skip ahead to your team, it's time-stamped on YouTube. It'll be time-stamped in the podcast. And we're going in alphabetical order again. So let's start with Boston College. Last year, they went 7-6, 3-5 in conference. New head coach this year. It's Bill O'Brien. Jeff Hafley took the defensive coordinator job with the Green Bay Packers. So Bill O'Brien, who is going to be the offensive coordinator for Ohio State, takes over this job. He previously coached at my alma mater, Penn State, and that was before taking the job at the Houston Texans. So it's interesting, Tyson. Normally when a head coach leaves, we see a mass exodus. That's not the case here. They're 14th in returning production, 20th in offensive yards, coming back at 80.6%. And even their defense is actually good, 13th in tackles percentage, returning at 79%. And plus their offensive line, 115 starts among them. Thomas Castellanos, probably their quarterback. He didn't have a great year last year, 15 touchdowns, 14 picks. Will he be able to fit into Bill O'Brien's offense? I think that's the biggest question surrounding them.
Yeah, and I think, it's going to be Ward and Robichaud out of the backfield, and I think that's going to help quite a bit when it comes to mitigating those turnovers. Brad, you mentioned that their defense returns a lot, but this is a defense that allowed almost 33 points a game. And so, yes, all those guys were making tackles, but they were making tackles 15 yards past the line of scrimmage. This is a unique situation because normally, it's not every day that a team or a program like Boston College gets someone of Bill O'Brien's pedigree. And I know he's fun to make fun of, but this is a dude who's coached at the highest of highs in college football. Like you mentioned the Penn State thing, but this is an Alabama offensive coordinator, right? This is a guy who made the playoffs in the NFL as a coach. Not the best general manager in the world, but that's neither here nor there. I think that this is a fun time to be excited if you're a Boston College fan, but you can't look at this and go, oh, Bill O'Brien's going to turn this around right away. Bill O'Brien is a slow burn kind of guy when he is in charge of these programs, and we've seen that kind of all over the place. It's easy to walk into Alabama and look around and go, oh, I get to, whatever Lamborghini I want to drive today, I can take out. They don't have any Lambos. This is a bunch of, Kias in the garage that Bill O'Brien's going to have to figure out how to work, and I think that there will be some growing pains. But the expectations are not very high for Boston College this year, especially I understand the expectation is always to make a bowl. Bill O'Brien's not losing his job if this team wins 3 games. And I think that's actually a good place to be if you're Boston College.
Yeah, I think if you want to be patient, and that's clearly, listen, this is not the old days where Boston College was a powerhouse, right? Competing against Notre Dame. It's just they've been passed by. It's another one of those schools that we talked about who's not spending NIL capital and is not aggressively pursuing excellence in athletics programs. Other schools in this conference are. There's more history, I guess, in the present term with those schools who allow those recruits to come in. And that's just the case with Boston College. And I think in this short term, Tyson, there could be some struggles. They open at Florida State. That is tough. And then they got to go to Missouri. They host Michigan State. I don't know. Is Michigan State could be better with Jonathan Smith? We'll talk about that in the Big Ten preview. But this is a tough schedule overall in the first year with Bill O'Brien. And like you said, they have returners, but how good are those returners? That's what we always have to measure. But 31st most difficult schedule, according to Phil Steele. I think this could be a tough go of it for Boston College. Let's move on over to California. Coming over from the Pac-12, a lot of Pac-12 schools making their way to the ACC. So that's something we got to keep in mind. Travel, ACC, right? It's on the Atlantic coast. I know they're flying private now, but man, we're talking about college kids having to travel. This isn't professional sports. So I think that's an angle that we're going to take when it comes to in-season betting for sure. 6-7 last year in the Pac-12. Their win total is at 6.5. Justin Wilcox, this is his 8th season. He's 36-43. Chandler Rogers is back for Cal this year at quarterback. You know, he had a good year, 3,300 yards, 62% completions, 29 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. That was at North Texas, though. This is a step up in class. Is he going to be able to do those same things? The good thing is he's a senior. Good thing is he has experience. And when it comes to experience, you know, Cal actually looks pretty good on that front. 37th in returning production, 43rd in offensive yards returning. That's not even accounting for Rodgers coming in. And then tackles 47th in the nation at 63.8%. And then you want to win in a new conference, a place you haven't competed against before, at an athlete level you haven't competed against before. You need good trenches. 112 offensive line starts as 28th in the country. I'm not the biggest Wilcox guy. I think if he struggles a little bit, and especially with the move to this conference, Tyson, Cal could be looking for a new head coach.
So you don't like Justin Wilcox because he's a defensive head coach whose teams have gotten worse on defense every year that he's been employed, to the point where they were allowing 33 points a game last year. Do I have this correct?
Well, that's a good way to say it.
Yeah, and so I don't think you're alone in that. Like, remember, was it 2021? The defense in Cal was awesome. Like, they were holding everybody to like 3 touchdowns a game. They were better than you thought they were going to be. And then it's kind of slowly slipped back. I don't expect the defense to get back to that level. We'll see about the 33 points a game. I think that's a killer, but not most of that, but some of it can be attributed to the fact that, dude, they turned the ball over like every other possession, it felt like a year ago. And they're bringing in guys with experience. We can mitigate that number a little bit. I think it was 28 total turnovers last year, and that cannot happen. I think Jaden Ott, the running back here, is one of the most underrated players in all of college football. I think he's one of the guys we talked about a little bit, which players are going to benefit from this new NCAA football video game. That's one of them, because he is so under the radar. It's ridiculous. He's going to make an NFL team pretty happy, but Cal as a whole, this is unfair. Like, they're going from one coast to the other over and over and over and over again. It's the Atlantic Coast Conference with a team that lives in the Pacific. Like, it's a lot of travel. That's going to be tough. I don't know if they'll be looking for a new coach at the end of this season, but I don't expect this year to be kind of a Cal Bears year. I know they boost the receiving core with I think it's Mikey Matthews from Utah, and then they brought in somebody else from Notre Dame. Those are both going to be they're fine ads, but you also have to ask yourself, you know, when somebody's transferring from Utah or Notre Dame to a program like Cal, is this a lateral move, or do they just want to get on the field? Is this somebody who can play? We're going to find all those things out. But as we sit here right now, I don't expect Cal to make any noise in the ACC.
At Auburn, at Florida State, and in their first 4 games, or 2 of their first 4 games, they start with UC Davis and they host San Diego State, which is sandwiched in between the Auburn and Florida State trips.
It's a tough game too.
It is tough. They don't really have layups on the schedule. I mean, you get a bye after Florida State, but then you got to host Miami. Then you got to go to Pitt. Then you got to host NC State. I mean, it's tough. So let's get into Clemson here. You know, very disappointing season last year. 9-4 record, went 4-4 in conference. It was the first time since, I believe, 2006, no, maybe, 2014 maybe, that they didn't win 10 games under Dabo Swinney. Think about that. I mean, his record here, this is his 17th season, is 170-43. I mean, this is a juggernaut, and people are taking shots at him because they went 9-4. Do you know how many Cal would kill to go 9-4 in the ACC? It's crazy, but that's the reality, and that's the expectations that this program has. So it is a kind of a giveth and taketh away type of deal, right? Like, you want to have those expectations. You want to be a program who should be competing for championships, but when you underachieve, you're going to be in trouble. And perhaps nobody was more, or perhaps there wasn't a bigger reason for that than the play of Cade Klubnik, Tyson. I mean, first-year starter, was the number 1 rated quarterback in his class in 2022. People were ready to throw a parade for him after he replaced DJU, and it was underwhelming. 2,800 yards, 64% completions, 19 touchdowns, 9 picks. Bad picks. And the problem was they didn't score in the red zone. I mean, you got to score in the red zone. And, you know, if you're not scoring touchdowns, you got to make field goals. They weren't doing that either. So, I mean, it was tough. Now, with that being said, they still averaged over 30 points a game on offense, and they closed like bats out of hell for the season. I think that carries over in this one. And then the other thing I just am intrigued about with Clemson, 35th in returning production. And we know if Clemson has guys back, they're experienced and they know the system because they don't transfer in, they don't transfer out. Like that's something we can kind of bank on. 23rd in offensive yards returning at 77%. Now their defense is 86th in the country with 53.4% of their tackles returning. A lot of people lost to the NFL. I am not worried about that when it comes to Clemson. They recruit at a high level. They replace at a high level. That's something that Dabo Swinney does. Offensive line, 106 starts among them, 34th in the country. That's great if you're looking for that. And Phil Maffa replacing Will Shipley. A lot of people are saying that's an upgrade. A lot of people are saying
people are
that's
so
an upgrade.
crazy, dude. People are so nuts. I mean,
We'll
look,
see.
we're not the biggest Will Shipley podcast on earth, but it was a little weird listening. Like all of last year, it was like it's the Donovan Edwards Blake Corum thing. Like we'll see. I like Phil Maffa, and we'll see how he operates by himself. But those are some pretty big shoes to fill, man. Like that's one of the better players in the history of the program, really. And Will Shipley.
For sure.
One thing that I want to kind of get out of the way here with Clemson, I'm curious to get your thoughts on it. To me, it feels like water just found its level. That's what it feels like to me. This feels like, look, and I'm speaking from experience here. If you're a Clemson fan, welcome to your middle Les Miles era, right? Like this is your 9-10 win era. There'll be maybe a 1-game variance here and there. But you're going to be a 9 or 10 win football team for the next 5 years. And you're going to look up and go, man, we've never really been in playoff contention, but we've also not been playing, the Alamo Bowl or whatever it is. This is a really good program. I think Dabo, like the Dabo hate is a little overblown. I think we can both kind of agree on that. But like the amount of loyalty that he's shown to his guys kind of it can border on like it's too long sometimes, right? Like we're finally getting Garrett Riley in here to call plays, and that's a huge thing, and we'll see how that works out. But to me, I think that this program is kind of like the glory days are gone is what I'm trying to say. This is a 9-10 win team for the next 5 years. You're going to continue to get that. The defense is going to be awesome. That's what Clemson defense is. Oh, who's going to play? Who cares? Right? Like we don't even know what position these dudes are playing on defense when they get recruited because they're all 6'4", 230 pounds and run 4.4s. And they just mix and match where they're going to go. I like Phil Maffa. I think was it Wesco is one of the big recruits that they signed this year. I think there's another one in that receiving core, so we'll see if they get some young blood in here. But to me, like the ACC is still up for grabs. So if Clemson wins this thing this year, I won't be surprised. But it does kind of feel like maybe they're going to get left outside of some of these college football playoffs just on the basis that they're in the worst of the Power 4 conferences. And it's not going to be all that impressive beating up an overhyped Miami team year after year.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. They're obviously suing the ACC. I mean, they've been trying to get out, but apparently the Big Ten and the SEC don't want them. So it'll be interesting to see where they go from there with Clemson. Garrett Riley, second year. Cade Klubnik, second year. There could be a boost. I think if you look at maybe the ceiling, and we'll talk about that in Money Makin Time, but that's something to keep in mind. But you mentioned it with Wesco. I mean, they had a ton of injuries last year in the wide receiver room, which hurt them. So if that comes back and if they're able to stay on the field, could be some untapped potential there. Let's get into Duke. Another head coaching change for Duke here. Mike Elko goes to Texas A&M. So Manny Diaz, again, was at my alma mater, Penn State, as their defensive coordinator. He comes in and takes over this program. Wants to be aggressive on defense. We know that. Was a disaster when he was the head coach of Miami. We know that. Sometimes in college football, things just don't go right in your first term. It sounds like we talked about it with Bill O'Brien in Boston College that Duke wants to build, and they want a guy in there that's going to be there for the long haul. Like they kind of had a feeling that Elko was going to use their program to jump for a bigger one, and that happened, right? With Manny Diaz, it feels like it was such a disaster with Miami. He doesn't want to go through that again, and I think he's going to, try to build it there, and he might even be there for a while. It'd be ideal for him, right? They had David Cutcliffe forever, but Malik Murphy, probably going to be the starter, in my opinion, coming in, transferring from Texas, was a former 5-star guy. How is this looking, this offense? But they got gutted, man. I mean, 108th in returning production. They got 51.1% of their offensive yards back, 56.3% of their tackles back, 35 offensive line starts, Tyson. I mean, this could be a really tough year.
And they lost like the entire defensive line, right? And that's like Manny Diaz is a really good defensive coach. Duke was a really good defensive football team. I don't know if it's going to match or mesh necessarily right away. I keep reading and listening. Well, the cupboard's not all the way bare. Like they got this guy and that guy. Manny Diaz being an excellent defensive coordinator is also independent. Like he can be that independent of the freak athletes that he had at Penn State, but that sure helps, right? Like when you're in charge of over and over again, like look at the way, even when the dudes from Penn State that he's coached don't go in the first or second round, the impact that they have right away shows you that they've been NFL players for a minute. And I just don't think that Duke necessarily has that at the moment. And I don't think that's the biggest concern for Manny Diaz. I think that he's going to kind of want to install a similar culture to what Mike Elko was doing already in Duke. So I don't think that transition is going to be too crazy. This just feels to me like they might be fun to watch here and there. This is not going to be a very competitive football team in most of their games.
Florida State, I mean, you want to talk about just probably the most frustrating result you could have had for those guys. I mean, you go undefeated, you win your conference, and you get left out because Jordan Travis suffers an injury. It's tough. Those are the breaks, and that's why people have been pounding on the table for, hey, let's expand this playoff, let's make it legit, and here we are. And, Florida State was just 1 year too late on that front, so you kind of feel for them. But they have an opportunity to make a massive statement here. I mean, they went 13-1 last year. They got pounded by Georgia in the championship or the bowl game when nobody played. But Mike Norvell, since being on the hot seat ahead of 2022, has turned this around. I mean, he now has a 37-17 or 31-17 record going into this fifth season. I'm curious though how this is going to look with DJ Uiagalelei at the quarterback spot, Tyson, because Jordan Travis was the eraser, right? Things broke down. He had experience. He was able to move with his legs, find open guys. And early in his career, he wasn't able to do that, but he was in college football for so long, he could do that or kind of build and knew where to go with the football in this offense. DJU looks great in practice. Oh, my God, he's shredding it up. We've heard that his entire career. When it gets to the games, he makes mistakes, and it's simple ones. There could be major regression here with him under center compared to what Jordan Travis did. That's my concern. And then when you take a look at this, they lost a ton, man. 5 offensive starters back on offense, 5 on defense. Only 24.2% of their yards are back on offense. It's 116th in the nation, 73rd in returning production. They were one of the top teams last year. Here's where it helps them, though. Their offensive line, 190 starts, third in the country. So you have a base there, which is good. But, man, this could be a major regression here, especially with the 12th hardest schedule in the country per Phil Steele.
Definitely a regression candidate. I think the DJU thing is something that you can't ignore. But I think we both watched enough college football to know the only way this dude's career ends is him winning an ACC championship for anybody but Clemson. Like it's preordained. This has been written. We know this. And again, kind of along the point that I had at the beginning of the show, this is the first ACC team that we're going to get into, and really one of the only ones where we're not talking about, transfers from North Texas or South Alabama. Not that those are bad programs, but you're bringing in Malik Benson from Alabama. You're bringing in Roydale Williams, right, from Alabama. You're like picking guys off of the top programs in the country and not necessarily, the 45th best or whatever it is. So I think that these guys are going to be able to come in and play. I think the number one thing that Florida State has going for them is going to be the secondary, because I don't know if there's anybody in the ACC that is scaring you when they're trying to throw the football. I'm not worried about Mike Norvell replacing the defensive line. Like, this is something that he is good at. He's been good at. A couple years ago, we were nervous about the offensive line, right? Like, Mike Norvell is going to get Jordan Travis killed, and eventually he did. But like, this offensive line has improved so much over the last couple of years, and they're kind of re-rolling all these same guys. The fun part, I think, as you go through some of these rosters, if you're doing this, you can do it as an exercise at home. The word junior carries, like, it's doing a lot of work for most of these programs. These are 4-year college players listed with junior next to their name, right? And that's Florida State has a bunch of these dudes. So no, they're not returning a ton of starters, but they're returning a bunch of guys that have played a lot of college football. I wouldn't be shocked if DJU sinks the ship this year, but I just don't see that happening. I think Florida State's going to be a good football team.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue with that. I mean, you laid it out greatly with how they approach the portal, and they've recruited extremely well under Norvell. And so it's just a machine. It feels like it's rolling right now. Here's an interesting team for me, and that's Georgia Tech. So Brent Key took over on an interim basis. And this was my favorite play was before, I forget the head coach who was there before got fired. And I said, Georgia Tech under heavy. Key comes in, takes over, and they just go on a winning streak. And then I lose my bet. And I'm like, this is unbelievable. And so far under him, it's been good. I mean, they're 11-10 in his tenure, but 7-6 last year, went 5-3 in conference, really surprised everybody. And Tyson Haynes-King is back. Like, he's an average quarterback, right? Like, we know that. He struggled at Texas A&M. But 2,842 yards, 62% completion percentage, led the ACC in touchdown passes with 27, but also gave it away with 16 interceptions that led the ACC as well. So that's what you get with them. But here's what I want to highlight. They're 24th in returning production. 11th in offensive yards returning, 94th in tackles returning, so 53.3%. So that's tough on defense, but this is a defensive guy. And 13th in the country with 128 offensive line starts coming back. Now, that sounds great, but fourth toughest schedule, according to Phil Steele. Host Florida State, at Syracuse, at Louisville, at North Carolina, host Notre Dame, at Virginia Tech, who we expect to be better, host Miami, host NC State, who we expect to be better, and then finish with the rivalry game at Georgia. That's a gauntlet.
Yeah. I think it's 11 teams that made a bowl in 2023 or 20, whatever year we're in last year. I think 11 of the teams in their schedule made a bowl, which is going to be tough. I think Georgia Tech is like the epitome of what the ACC is going to be this year. I think you can kind of like draw a line from them and go down. Let's say they're the 8th or 9th best team in the ACC. And you can kind of go down to 17. They're all going to have similar issues. Like key teams, they're going to score points. Like we know this. They're not going to stop anybody. And I think as you get to the upper echelon here, which I'm defining right now, currently on August 6th as two teams in Florida State and Clemson, and I'm open for discussion on that. But the physicality is different at the top of this conference, and I think that is going to be very visible. One of these teams from the middle will rise. I don't think it'll be Georgia Tech, but they all have the same problems, man. Like it's very we got to run the football, like we got to play 60 minutes of hard-nosed football. They're all in trouble.
Louisville, I mean, we talked about Florida State. I mean, this for me is a team with regression written all over it. 10-4 last year, 7-1 in conference. We're in the ACC championship game in Jeff Brom's first season since coming over from Purdue. They get in Tyler Shuck, right? Super talented. He's always hurt, right? Like, I mean, he's just always hurt. He's transferring from Texas Tech and just hasn't been able to stay on the field. 67th in returning production. Offensively, this is where it gets scary. They're 16.2% of their yards are back from last season. That's 126 in the country. Tackles, 58.1%, 65th, but their offensive line is 4th with 172 starts. So that's a good base there. Jeff Brown's been able to coach. Like, are they going to have guys that can come in and immediately step up? 27th toughest schedule scares me. Their win total is at 8.5. I have a hard time seeing them go over that. But what are you thinking about Louisville?
I've just seen enough of Jeff Brom coach teams to know that fading him is a bad idea. Like I think that this dude is one of the better coaches in college football. I think hold on to him while you can, Louisville, because somebody's going to come calling soon. College football changes so fast. You know, there was like he was the hot name, and then his team sucked, and then Jeff Brom stinks, and he's at Louisville now. He'll never do anything. 10 wins right away, and he's right back, to being in contention for some of these massive jobs. Are they going to win 10 games again? I don't think so. Are they going to barely make a bowl? I also don't think so. So I think there is like a solid little window here of where this team can finish. They have more variance in their outcomes, I think, than pretty much everybody else in the ACC. Like you mentioned, the defense, and they have a super deep group of like defensive backs and all this stuff, and they're going to rank near the top of the ACC pass defense again. That's what Jeff Brown teams like to do anyways. It doesn't matter in the ACC, and like I don't care. Like to me, that sounds awesome in the SEC and the Big Ten. It's not going to win you a ton of games in the ACC. I think that Louisville is going to have to score a bunch of points again, and in order to do that, Tyler Shuck has to play. And like, sure, we've seen flashes of potential, and that's all you're going to hear about him. We're kind of a show me first, I'll believe you second. That's at least the way I operate when it comes to these kind of things.
Yeah, I agree with you. And that's one of the reasons why it's, God, do we want to go against Braum? Because he continually shows that he overperforms. So something to chew on there. And speaking of variance, talking about Miami, I mean, my God, I drank the Kool-Aid last year. You know, we were liked what we saw with Tyler Van Dyke in his limited sample size early. Last year was a complete disaster. He's no longer with this program. They go in and bring Cam Ward, who, let's be honest, the stats look insane. 3,700 yards last year at Washington State, but only 25 touchdowns, 7 picks, you know, and he was supposed to do crazy things at Washington State when he transferred from the FCS level. Kind of was disappointing. But he's a solid quarterback. I think he's the highest paid quarterback in the history of the sport based on how Miami spends money in NIL and to get him to not turn pro. But Tyson, at the end of the day, this is Mario Cristobal as the head coach of the program. So listen, 82nd in returning production, you know, whatever. At the end of the day, it's Mario Cristobal in charge of a college football program, and he hasn't shown that he can lead them in the right direction. They massively have underachieved last year and in year 2 when they were like, okay, there's at least players here to compete, and they just didn't do it.
Yeah, and we're kind of ragging on them for winning 7 games last year with all the expectations. Brad, that was a 2-win increase over the previous year. Like this is, there are a lot of teams in the ACC who would say, "I love that trajectory." This is Miami football at this point, folks. And I mentioned it's going to be kind of like an AAU team. Cam Ward is new. Damian Martinez is new. Like everybody on defense, Powell is new. Dione Hill is new. Mario Cristobal he's just one of these guys, man, that is surviving on maybe the good old boys club as far as like, let's just give this guy a job because they're going to be fine. He's going to do 3 or 4 dumb things throughout the season that cost them games. And that just is what it is. And that's not a team that I am willing to back as a 10-win football team or a team that can compete for a conference title.
10 returning starters on offense, 7 on defense. It's like, all right, man, we'll if you can't do it this time, we'll see what happens.
He can't do it this time.
Probably not. NC State. Now, man, Dave Dorn just continues to be impressive with what he does at NC State. Last year, going 9-4, they went 6-2 in conference. This is his 12th season, and he's amassed a record of 81-58. And it's been impressive what he's been able to do there. What I'm intrigued by is he gets Grayson McCall to come in to be the quarterback. You know, we know him from Coastal Carolina days. This is a step up. Should be a better offense than what they had last year. Like that's the expectation. Now, only 32% of their yards are returning. That's 105th in the nation. 95 offensive line starts, so you're going to give McCall a little bit more time to make some plays. But man, 63rd toughest schedule in the country here from Phil Steele. I mean, Tyson could take advantage of that and really be a surprise team.
Yeah, if you're looking at the ACC and trying to find like who can go from the 8-win number or 9-win number to conference champion, NC State's going to be your best bet if you ask me. I mean, the pass catching group's going to be good too. Like they're bringing in Justin Jaw. They already had Concepcion, right? Like we know that, or Conception, sure. But like Justin Jaw
sounds better.
They're bringing in Noah Rogers, Wesley Grimes. They're getting the running back from Duke from a year ago. And then, we need a new center. Let's just call Notre Dame. You guys got anybody you can kick over here to have start for us? I think NC State is going to be a good team. The defense has been good every year for the last 3 or 4 years, essentially, since this regime took over. They lost Peyton Wilson. Is that going to matter a ton in like winning football games? Maybe. Like he was a really good college player. He was never on the field as much as you would like, but that's an All-American. And so that part remains to be seen. But I think NC State would be kind of the post-hype sleeper, so to speak, because we'll talk about like the real sleeper here in this conference, alphabetically. So I don't know. We probably got 40 more teams until we get to the S's. But I think NC State would be the one.
Let's go down Tobacco Road here. Talk about North Carolina. Here's what we know that North Carolina is going to do. They're going to score 1 million points and they're going to give up a ton. Like that's how it goes. But 8-5 last year with Drake May as the quarterback. That's disappointing. 4-4 in conference. Mac Brown, this is a 16th overall here at North Carolina. It's a 6th back. He's 38-27 since coming back. It's just hasn't quite been there. Now, here's a guy who's going to be the quarterback. Max Johnson started out as LSU, True, maybe, because, right, it feels like he's going to be the starter and somebody always jumps him. Transferring in from Texas A&M, there's some stuff there. There's really not a whole lot. He's a left-hander who can throw the ball well, doesn't throw it accurately. I mean, that's kind of been his MO. Gets hurt, isn't consistent, gets benched. I don't know if maybe Mac Brown can just kind of wave the magic wand on him and it improves, but 81st in returning production, 69th on offensive yards returning, 68th in tackles percentage returning, 94th in offensive line starts. Like, it's just not a lot that you can write home about here, what you like about North Carolina. Somehow they're going to score 50 points a game, it feels like, and they'll give up 60 points a game. Like, that's what we know about.
Yeah, and that was a Gene Chizik defense. So maybe, as we go forward here with Jeff Collins, I just like Gene Chizik is so anti playing aggressive football that I think it genuinely hurt them, especially like how many times in the last couple of years that, I mean, we're talking about teams that had Drake May and teams that had
Sam Howell.
Yeah, Sam Howell. You go back and there's a bunch of dudes who played and got drafted really high in the NFL and scored a bunch of points in college, but they just refused to be aggressive on the defensive side of the football. So to me, that's the number one thing I'm looking at. You mentioned we know they're going to score 1 million points and they're going to give up 1,000,001. The other thing we know, Brad, is North Carolina is going to run the piss out of the football. And that's going to happen again. Amarian Hampton is a stud. Like, they got a ton of studs in that room. They got some transfers too. I don't think any immediate impact guys. I think North Carolina is slotting in very comfortably to me as the team right above that tier where I was talking about with Georgia Tech, where you kind of drop it down. North Carolina is going to be the best of that bunch.
Yeah, Jeff Collins, that's the coach who was fired and Brent Key took over. There we go.
Look how it's all
full circle. Moving over to Pittsburgh, man, what a disaster last year.
I'm over
3-9.
Pittsburgh.
Oh my God. I'm just over Narduzzi. This guy thinks his shit doesn't stink. And he tries to talk down to everybody. It's like, brother, what are you talking about? He fires the offensive coordinator after they had the best season they've had under his tenure, Narduzzi, because they didn't run the football enough. Brother, this is 2024. You gotta throw the rock. We're not running wishbone stuff. Come on. So he completely overreacts this time, Tyson. Now he's going to go back to the spread offense. What type of control do you have in your program? I mean, it's insanity. Now, the good news is they have 9 returners on offense. The bad news is it's only 45% of their production that's back and 45% of their yards. Nate Yarnell took over late season. That's the guy you're rolling with. They had 3 different quarterbacks they trotted out there, and this is the guy. So wasn't able to get somebody. I think they were scared off by the Jerkovich and Vayu type of deal. I'm just over the Pitt thing. I'm over Narduzzi. This guy continues to try to talk down on everybody. He taught the game of football, apparently, created it, and yet they can't win games and get to bowls.
No, I'm over Pat Narduzzi as well. Another guy who's going to pound his chest and talk to you about his defense, and then isn't going to play any defense, right? The defense gets steadily worse every year. At the end of, right before the transfer window closes, you lose Solomon DeShields and Dion Hayes, right? Those are 2 guys that were, I was going to say integral, but is anybody really that valuable to a 3-win football team? And then Nate Temple goes out with a season-ending injury, I think in June. And so that's 3 starters there that you lose right at the end of spring semester, and it's really hard to replace those guys. The Pitt thing was really fun for the year with Kenny Pickett and Jordan Addison. It's done, man. The goose is cooked.
Okay, let's get in our team here. SMU. Now, they're not coming over from the Pac-12. No. Where are they coming over from? Who even knows, man? I'm so confused. But I think it was the AAC, I believe, or it was
American
something like
Athletic
that.
Conference.
Now, our boy Rhett Lashley, the head coach here, 3rd season, he's 18-9. They went 11-3 last year. Just studs across the board at SMU. Let me just lay this out for you. Bring in quarterback Preston Stone with them. Chucked the ball for almost 3,200 yards, 28 touchdowns, 8 picks. Again, this is a higher level of play. We talked about with Chandler Rogers. Is he going to be able to do it here? We'll see. But my goodness, 7th in returning production, 23rd in offensive yards back, 20th in tackle percentage back at 73.1%, 21st with 120 offensive line starts. And let's just factor in that they have the 76th toughest schedule in the country.
Yep.
You couldn't ask for a better entry into the ACC than this.
Yeah, coming from the AAC to the ACC is
Mm-hmm.
it's like a bad Backstreet Boys album or something. But this is a team that they're going to score 40 points on just about everybody. Like they might not score 40 on your Florida States and Clemson's as far as the ACC goes, but you better believe you are tuning in at 10 a.m. for the kickoff between them and North Carolina. Like that is fireworks, and we're going to get a lot of those games. The one thing I'm a little worried about is the defense. I know the improvement was drastic from 2 years ago, right? They're allowing 35 points a game. Last year, that number's cut all the way in half, essentially. Like one of the better statistical defenses as far as scoring goes in all of college football. This is a little bit different level of competition. This is a little bigger offensive lines that you're going to have to face. There's a little bit more physical running backs, a little faster wide receivers. I think corner is probably their biggest area of concern. But dude, Preston Stone might walk into the ACC as one of the 3 or 4 best quarterbacks in the entire thing, and that means something, especially in this conference.
Absolutely. And here's another Pac-12 entrant, Stanford.
Skip.
Well, here's what I don't want to. It's because I love Troy Taylor, their head coach. Like he was a stud at Sacramento State. But Tyson, let's just talk about it. I mean, Ashton Daniels, man, if he can figure out this offense, they could put up points. The problem is the defense. We'll see what happens. They're third in the country with 85.1% returning. Are they a good defense? I don't know, but they're intriguing because they have so many starters back. 10th in returning production, 10 on offense that are back, 8 on defense. 10th toughest schedule though for a Stanford roster has to travel again from the Pacific to the Atlantic. I think it's going to be tough.
Yeah, like is Stanford going to take a step forward from a year ago? Probably. Is that going to be enough for them to make a bowl? Probably not. I mean, this is like Aya Manor, right? That's a big wide receiver. He's one of the better players. Like another slept-on guy. He had over 1,000 yards a year ago. All that stuff's awesome. But if you weren't staying up until like to watch the Pac-12 after dark, it's kind of hard to explain what the Stanford football team was like a year ago. And I think we're going to get something similar. I'm with you. The man Troy Taylor is the man. They might not be the worst team in the ACC, but they're close.
Yeah, they're close. Another intriguing head coaching hire here is Syracuse. Now they move on from Dino Babers. So they hire Fran Brown. He's never been a head coach before. This is his first experience. He's a recruiting machine, and his thing is let's just go out and let's get dudes. And he built a staff that can recruit. Problem is, can they coach? That's what we're trying to figure out here. We'll see. They bring in Kyle McCord in the transfer portal. Now, was he great for Ohio State? Yeah, not really, but 3,100 yards, 66% completions, 24 touchdowns, 6 picks. For an Ohio State standard, they threw him out of Columbus. For Syracuse, this is the best quarterback they've had in a long time. I mean, they're jumping with joy for this. So the ability to coach is my biggest question mark here because they have the 60th toughest schedule. Okay. That's manageable for them here. 41st returning production, very, very nice. Like you need that. And his ability to kind of keep people here and go and get transfers. This is an intriguing team, but I'll just put it this way: 7.5 wins. Oof, that's pretty tall for me.
I think so too. I'm excited. The defense is going to run 4.25 this year. I think that is one of the more fun. It's just the difference between the NFL and college football, right? We get a little bit more exotic looks from defenses, and like you mentioned, the recruiting aspect. This is a guy who goes out and he brings back Deuce Chestnut, who took off from Syracuse to go to LSU, and he's like, "Man, I need you to come right back through the door here for me. We're running this 4.25. You're going to be one of our more important players." Is Syracuse going to like surprise people and win 9 games this year? No. Syracuse might beat your favorite team. And I think that is going to be the sign of a successful season if they can upend somebody. Marvin Harrison Jr. is not walking through the door for Kyle McCord. So I'm interested to see what it looks like thrown to was it LaQuint Allen as the running back? Tight end is Gadsden, but I don't know any receivers' names. So I think that it's going to be tough for Kyle McCord this year.
Speaking of what could be tough, Virginia, it just has not been a good tenure for Tony Elliott here since he left Clemson and took over this job. He's 3-9. It was 3-9 last year. He's 6-16 in his 2 seasons, going into his 3rd. We know the tragedy that took place with the shooting on campus. I mean, you got it. How do you recover from that? It's just heartbreaking stuff there. I mean, you feel for him. And I don't want to say this in like a flippant way? Is that something that bonded the player? Like, I don't know. I'm not on the ground there. For all intents and purposes, Tony Elliott is very well liked by everybody in the community and the football program. Does that, can they build upon those things and can they have a good year this year? That's what you want to see. 8 returning starters, 8 returning defenders. Okay, that's a good base. 20th in returning production. Very good base. Like, that's okay. That's what you want. If you're going to take a step for Virginia, you need those numbers in your favor. 37th in offensive yards returning, 43rd in tackles returning, 60th with the 81 offensive line starts. I mean, for a guy who's on the hot seat potentially, this is the time to do it, and this is the team to do it with. It's probably his best team. But he got handed the 11th toughest schedule in the country. At Wake Forest, home Maryland, home Boston College, home Louisville. Okay, but you go at Clemson, at Pitt, at Notre Dame, home SMU, at Virginia Tech. It's a tough one. I don't know how this is going to go for him.
No, I think Tony Elliott needs to call Tony Bennett and ask him how the hell you get somebody in a Virginia uniform to play defense, because this is the worst defense, one of the worst defenses in all of college football last year. They were the worst in the ACC. They're it's like 34 points a game. I think it was over 6 yards a snap essentially they allowed. So every time you lined up under center and snapped the ball, every 2 times you got a first down, and that's just unsustainable. That's not this time. Like, this is a team that improved over 2 years ago, right? Like, there's a lot of 1-score games on that schedule if you go back and look, and they did beat North Carolina and they beat Duke, and those are good wins. Sometimes you reach the ceiling as far as improvement goes, and I don't think that Virginia's at theirs, but as currently constructed, like, this Virginia's program ceiling is 7 wins, dude.
Ceiling, man, that might even be generous, Tyson.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it felt weird coming out of my mouth, but if Virginia makes a bowl game, I will be thoroughly surprised.
Yeah, it'd be great. I mean, their win total is at 4.5, right? Like, that's all right. And, it's going to be another tough year. That's what the odds makers are saying. But who in Virginia? Here's who could be the surprise team: Virginia Tech. And again, another guy that I kind of know well, was not a fan of during his tenure at Penn State. That's Brent Pry. Just was way too passive on defense for me, but especially in the secondary. But that's neither here nor there. 10-14, it's been a slog, but they went 7-6 last year. Really surprised people. 5-3 in conference. They get Kyron Drones back, probably the best true dual threat guy in this conference. I mean, maybe you can throw Cam Ward in there, but I think he likes to throw the ball a bit more than Drones. But Drones, 2,000 yards through the air, almost 1,000 yards on the ground. 17 touchdowns, only 3 interceptions. All right. He's got to get more accurate. He was only 58% completion percentage through the air. But Tyson, here's where the Hokies are sitting pretty. 2nd in the country in returning production. Are you kidding me? 2nd in offensive yards returning. And then on defense, Brent Pry especially 22nd, 72.9% of their tackles are back. And then 19th in the country in 122 offensive line starts, and combine that with 65th toughest schedule. This is a team that can make some noise.
Definitely. And you mentioned being 2nd in the country in returning on offense, but that's all 11 starters too. Like that I don't know, the way that factors into that number there, but I think there's something to be said about this group played together, with each other. And that's something huge, because they ended the season just on an absolute tear, like South Carolina-esque from a couple of years ago, right? And so I think that ending 5-7 combined with bringing everybody back is awesome. One thing, Brad, that you might know better than a lot of people listening, Brent Pry struggles to stop the run. He's always struggled to stop the run. This is a conference where they're going to run the football, and you go out and you get a guy from Middle Tennessee State to play middle linebacker, and you're bringing back a bunch of really good defensive linemen. Is this going to be the year that he figures out how to stop the run? Because to me, that's the real thing. And maybe it is, but a tiger doesn't change his stripes, brother. And I have a hard time believing that the talent that he's had at other stops that weren't able to do it when it mattered, he's going to be able to say, oh yeah, we can shut Moffa down today and hold Clemson to 85 yards on the ground.
Yeah, we'll see, man. It's tough. Looking at the schedule, at Vandy, home Marshall, at Old Dominion, home Rutgers. Those are your first 4. There's a chance to start off 4-0.
Hot start.
Yeah, so we'll see. Now let's close out here. We'll get in the money making time after. Wake Forest. disappointing 2023. Went 4-8, 1-7 in conference. They're banged up. They were missing. Oh God, who went to Notre Dame last year? The quarterback.
Hartman.
Yeah, Sam Hartman. So that was a huge loss. But Dave Clawson, normally he overachieves compared to expectations. He's in his 11th season, 63-61. I mean, considering it's Wake Forest, holy smokes, how do you win two games above 500 at Wake Forest in this conference? It's actually impressive. Quarterback, here's where I'm concerned. Hank Bachmeier, Boise State transfer, Louisiana Tech transfer. Just not a good quarterback. And he's stepping up in class. Really?
Yeah.
You see what he did in the Mountain West and the Louisiana Tech last year? 76 in returning production, 94th in offensive yards returning, 52nd in tackles returning. It just feels like it's going to be another disappointing year for Dave Clawson. As disappointing as that is to say.
Yeah, and this is like a program that we would love to do well. I don't think Wake Forest is going to be a very good team this year. I wouldn't be surprised if like Michael Kern gets burned at quarterback here. It's just a guy that's like kicked around at Wake Forest for a while, but it's going to be a mix, I think, between Bachmeier. There's a true freshman. I'm forgetting his name. His last name starts with an H. That's all I can pull out of my noggin right now. But I think we're in a true kind of three-man quarterback battle that they're not going to quite know the way that this thing is going to shake out. Maybe until like week 7. Like one of these guys has to go take the job. We've seen Bachmeier struggle to do that in the past twice at 2 different schools. So I don't know if it's going to happen again here. I keep saying it doesn't matter if you can't defend the pass in the ACC. Might matter for Wake Forest because it's bad, brother.
Hecklinsky.
There we go. Look at
that. All right, that's it for our previews. Let's get into Money Makin Time here. What we do if this is your first time joining us, we pick one conference champion. Now, I'm going to sprinkle on one of these guys here, but we just want to get it on the record who's going to win. Tyson and I like to compare. We have a Google spreadsheet. We don't bullshit. Everything that we put in here, we play with our own cash. Like, we're not professional bettors.
No, please sponsor us. If you're watching this and you run a sports book, please.
Yes, that too. So
was that frantic enough?
By the way, it was frantic enough. Yeah. Book it with Trent. Prize picks. Come on, boys. No, but I mean, if we're pro bettors, if we present ourselves as that, first of all, which we don't, we would have been betting this thing in freaking March when these things open. But I mean, these are the sharpest these lines are going to get. I mean, we're less than a month away from kick. I mean, we're not coming on here and telling you that we're elite bettors by any stretch of the imagination. But let's get into it. I'm going to go with Clemson at plus 370 to win the conference. I talked about it a little bit. We know their defense is going to be good. That's just what it is under Dabo Swinney. I think when you look at where this offense could be, the ceiling is what kind of puts me over the top. Like, everybody's looking at the negatives. Oh, Cade Klubnik wasn't as good. Oh, they just didn't score as many points. But what happens if they do put it all together? What happens if Klubnik takes that next step, shows why he's the 5-star? Even if he's not Lawrence or Deshaun Watson, he throws for 3,000 yards, 3,200 yards, finishes off drives in the red zone. Phil Maffa's good. The receivers step up, and we have a legit 2-headed monster. That's how Clemson's won in the past. They can do it again if that's the case. So I'm going to go plus 370 here on Clemson to win the ACC.
I don't hate that at all. I actually think, like we were talking about a little bit, I think the ACC is kind of wide open, like in a way that maybe the odds aren't reflecting, but I'm stupid enough to take the favorite. Give me Florida State to win this conference. I think Mike Norvell has done a heck of a job. I think that they're going to come out fired up, ready to roll. And DJU is going to get into the college football playoff while Clemson isn't, and that's going to be poetic.
All right. Let's get into the win total bets. I pared mine down a little bit here. I have 4. Tyson has a little bit more than me. Let's stick on the same page here. Let's just talk. I mean, I already mentioned it. Clemson over 8.5. That's minus 172. So, that's roughly 70 cents is worth a win. So the odds makers are telling you they're probably going to win 9 games. I think they win 9 or 10 games. If they lose 3 games in their schedule, Georgia, Florida State, maybe Miami, okay, you're at 9 wins. You're hitting the over. I'll pay the juice on this one.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think if they stumble in the middle of the year to like a random team from the ACC, it's not going to matter quite as much because Clemson's also going to beat somebody you didn't really expect them to. I think last year, like the most encouraging thing was the game against Florida State where They should have won that football game, Brad. They should have won that football game maybe 3 or 4 times. So the nuts and bolts are here for a really good season for Clemson. I just don't have them winning the whole thing. But if they're closer to 10, in my opinion, than 8.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, next one that we're simpatico on here is we're going to fade Manny Diaz in his first year. Duke under 5.5. That's -172. So again, they think that Duke's going to win 5 games. Like that's what they're telling you. So okay, we get a little leeway. I think that's being generous. So I'm going to go under 5.5 here.
Yeah, and if you were listening a year ago, Duke was like my preseason darling. I was all over Duke all the time. This year, I feel the exact opposite. I think that it's going to take Manny. It's going to take him a Mario Cristobal amount of time to turn this Duke program into what he wants.
I'll stick on the negative side of things for me here. I'm going to go under Syracuse at -142 on their win total. I have too many questions about Fran Brown and his ability to coach. I have too many questions about this coaching staff and their ability to actually coach. Like you said with McCord, if he was struggling with that offense, that offensive line, those weapons, what is he doing here? They can't just roll the ball out and win. That's Florida State when they face Syracuse. That's Clemson. It's going to be tough. And Tyson, I'm looking here. So you have to win 8 games. So it's 12 games on the schedule. Ohio, Georgia Tech, Stanford, Holy Cross, at UNLV, at NC State, at Pitt, home Virginia Tech, at Boston College, at Cal, home UConn, home Miami. I'm struggling to find 8 wins. I mean, okay, Ohio, let's say they win. Let's give them Georgia Tech, home Stanford. So that's in Holy Cross. Let's go 4. Let's even give them UNLV. That's 5 wins. Are we sure they're going to beat NC State? Are we sure they're going to beat Pittsburgh on Thursday night? Even though we talked bad about them, they tend to win. Virginia Tech at home. We just talked about Virginia Tech at Boston College, going up there. Boston College off a bye. It's Bill O'Brien at late in the season. Then they got to go to the West Coast and play California. And then they come back Connecticut. Okay, let's give them a win there. Then they end with Miami. I am not seeing 8 wins here. So give me under 7.5 at -142.
No, and we apologize to all 14 Syracuse football fans for the hate that you've received today. We won't let it happen again. Tune in for basketball season. I believe this is the one you have queued up for me here. I'm going Florida State over 9.5. Kind of goes with my ACC champion prediction. I think this is a 10-win football team. Look, 2 years ago, I wanted Mike Norvell out the door. I was like, this guy is ruining the brand that Bobby Bowden has worked so hard to build up. Like, what are you doing? And I have completely changed my tune. I know they got stopped by Georgia, and that's kind of the last thing we all remember. They're not going to be as good as they were a year ago, but they don't have to be undefeated to win this ACC, and they don't have to be undefeated to make this college football playoff. And I think that Florida State is going to kind of assume the position here. They're going to be the 7th best team in the country. That just is what it is.
I'm going to end on a positive note for me here. SMU over 8.5 at +104. I'm sorry. We just laid out the schedule. I mean, we laid out back all the returning production that we have. And then let's just take a look at this schedule. At Nevada, let's give them a win. Home Houston Christian, win. Home BYU, let's give them a win. So that's 3 out of the bat and off the bat. And then you go bye week. Home TCU, who was struggling. Okay, you face Florida State at home. First of all, at home, nice. Let's give them a loss there. At Louisville, all right, maybe a loss there. Bye. Then you go at Stanford, at Duke, 2 of the worst teams in the conference. Home Pittsburgh, I'm liking SMU there. Home Boston College, again, I like SMU. And then at Virginia, in home Cal to close. Tyson, I'm looking at this. There's maybe 1 or 2 that I really look at and say, oh, they're going to lose those games. And that's even one. I mean, if Louisville takes a step back, SMU could legitimately lose 1 game this season.
And they're catching that game at home, and anything can happen. It's college football. I think like if you have not necessarily been paying attention to the hype building around the SMU Mustangs, you will find out soon, because this team is electric. They're very fun to watch. Sometimes the American Athletic Conference teams get buried a little bit. They have put out some absolute bangers over the last couple of years, and SMU gets to bring back everybody to do it again. I'll kind of rapid fire through these. You're done, correct?
Yes, I am.
Okay, this is uncharted territory for me. Normally, Brad has way more bets than I do, so not totally sure how to handle this. I'm going under Virginia, 4.5 wins. That's an even pick 'em right now at -110. I think Virginia's going to suck. We kind of laid that out. I think a couple of these teams in this conference are going to stink, and all the numbers are set at 4.5. I'm going to lose some of these. I'm aware of that. But one that I'm not super concerned with losing, Brad, and they're giving me juice. I'm going under 4.5 wins for Wake Forest here at +124. I just you can't stop a nosebleed. You can't score points. It's going to be hard to win football games. Next one here, I'm going with my boy Bill O'Brien, over 4.5 wins for Boston College. I just think that he is going to be able to get 5 out of these guys. I don't know if they're going to make a bowl game, but the Pinstripe Bowl is right down the street, right? Like let's lock it in here for Bill O'Brien and Boston College. And then it wouldn't be an ACC preview show, folks, if I didn't have Miami under. It's 9.5 right now. I'm eating a ton of juice. It's -170. I don't care. And I'm going to fade them week over week, and I'm going to win more than I lose. This is a program that no matter – this is the Dallas Cowboys of college football. Like, I don't care how many times we do this with these guys. They're going to be worse than you think. They're going to lose more games than you think, and they're going to do it in ways that break your brain.
Well, here you go. Since Mario Cristobal has taken over, they are 8-17 against the spread. So – Tyson's got to be fading them, and it sounds like he's going to be winning a little bit here. So, man, okay. Well, that's our preview. A ton of teams we got there. We tried to keep it around an hour. Tyson, we are now officially got our shit together, and we have our Discord up for this football season. So we're going to give them a little info where they can find more of our plays.
Yes, it is in the Discord app. I'm actually pulling it up right now just to make sure that I get the name right. But it's I Said What I Said betting channel on Discord. That is correct.
Yes.
Betting group. Sorry. But just type in I Said What I Said. I will get this down, folks. But it's free. We'll let you write in. We want to share in your misery and your pain as you lose some of these close college football bets. But more importantly, we want to celebrate with you when you hit Middle Tennessee State over Miami money line, at +470 during the season. We want to be able to send gifts and all of that fun stuff. So hop in there. This year we have a little bit of a different plan. Discord allows us to do some things that we weren't able to do on previous platforms. We're kind of planning right now on maybe some voice calls, things like that, especially kind of more focused on the NFL, but you won't know any of that if you're not in the Discord group. So I Said What I Said. We'll let you write in. It's free. Just come bet with us. And the Olympics are still going on, man. Like we still got a couple more days of this thing. If you're hot to trot on the men's 200-meter final, you get in there and let us know.
In the meantime, like, subscribe, and share. If you're watching on YouTube, smash the like button on the way out. If you're listening in podcast form, rate us 5 stars if you haven't already. Really helps us out. Stay subscribed. Again, we got a ton of content coming out. This is our busy season, right? You got accountants who get ready for tax season. This is our season. So we're cranking stuff out. That's why you got to stay connected with us. And if you want to give us a follow on our socials, it's at ISWIS_pod. Because we got a little late start, because I had something to do last week during baseball season, during the baseball trade deadline, we're going to be cranking out stuff. So we're starting our NFL previews later in the week. Next week, we might have to do 2 college previews. We'll kind of keep you updated. It's helpful. There's only 4 Power 4 conferences now. So, we got a little more leeway. But, that's why you got to stay subscribed, because we got a ton of football content coming out. We can't wait for the season with you guys. And so we will talk to you later. Till then, peace.